The sound that ended my marriage wasn't a gunshot or a slamming door. It was the screech of packing tape being pulled from a roll, a long, loud, ripping sound that echoed through our half-empty house, tearing my life apart, one cardboard box at a time. My husband, David, was leaving, after 12 years, 2 kids, and 1 mortgage. He had decided our life together was a subscription he no longer wished to renew. Have you ever had your heart broken, really, truly shattered into a million tiny pieces, until you're not sure how to even breathe around the jagged edges of it all if you have? You know that the final conversation, the last words spoken, are often the ones that leave the deepest and most poisonous scar. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you've ever been a victim of a cruel parting shot. He was packing the last of his things from the office, his expensive ergonomic chair, his framed diploma, the stupid, pretentious Newton's cradle I'd bought him for his 30th birthday. I just stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame, a ghost in my own home. I was watching him methodically erase himself from our shared history. The walls were pale where our photos used to hang. The bookshelves were gapped and uneven. The whole house felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for the final blow. So that's it. Then I asked, my voice sounding small and foreign in the cavernous quiet, "You're really just walking away?" He didn't look at me. He just kept wrapping his desk lamp in bubble wrap with a focus that was clinical, detached. "We've been over this, Maya," he said, his voice flat. "It's not working. We've grown apart. People change. People change." That was his new mantra. It was so neat, so clean. It absolved him of all guilt. It wasn't a betrayal. It was just a natural, unavoidable evolution, like the changing of the seasons. It had nothing to do with Ashley, the 26-year-old paralegal at his law firm, the one with the yoga-toned body and the bright, untired eyes. No, of course not. We had just grown apart. "I don't understand," I whispered, though I was really just talking to myself. Just last month, we were planning a trip to Disney with the kids. We were happy. Weren't we happy? He finally stopped packing and looked at me. There was no sadness in his eyes, no regret, just a cold, hard impatience, the look of a man who has already left and is just annoyed that your ghost is still haunting him. "You were happy, Maya," he said. "I was pretending. I haven't been happy for a long time." The words were a physical blow, a whole life, a whole history of shared laughter and secret jokes and sleepy Sunday mornings, all of it, dismissed as a performance. My reality had been a fiction he was reluctantly acting in. "Why?" I pleaded, the last of my pride crumbling. "Just tell me why. What did I do wrong?" He sighed, a deep put-upon sound, as if my heartbreak was a tedious administrative task he had to complete before he could leave. He ripped a final piece of tape and sealed the box, pressing down on it with a definitive, final thud. He picked it up and walked towards the door, towards me. I thought he was just going to push past me, but he stopped. Standing so close, I could smell the expensive cologne I'd bought him for Christmas. "You want to know why?" he said, his voice dropping to a low, confidential whisper, the kind he used to use when he told me he loved me. It was the cruelest part of it all. "You really want the truth?" I just nodded, unable to speak, bracing myself for the impact. He looked me up and down, a slow, clinical, contemptuous appraisal. His eyes lingered on my waist, on the soft stomach that had carried our 2 children, on the comfortable curves of a woman who had spent the last decade putting her family's needs before her own. "Look in a mirror, Maya," he whispered. "You really let yourself go." He paused to let the poison sink in. "You know," he continued, his voice now full of a sick, feigned sincerity, "if you had just tried to lose some of that baby weight, if you had made any effort at all to still be the woman I married, then maybe things would be different. But you didn't. You got comfortable. And I can't be with someone who doesn't respect herself enough to take care of her own body." And that was it, the parting shot. He had taken my deepest insecurity, the one I had confessed to him in the dark, the fear that my body was no longer desirable after 2 pregnancies, and he had polished it, sharpened it, and handed it back to me as the reason my entire world was ending. It wasn't his affair. It wasn't his broken promises. It was my body. I was the one who was broken. I was the one at fault. He walked past me then, leaving me standing alone in the empty doorway of our empty office. I heard the front door open, then close. I heard his car start. Then the sound of the engine faded down the street, leaving only a profound, crushing silence. I stood there for a long time, his words echoing in the quiet. You let yourself go. Slowly, like a robot, I walked down the hall to our bedroom, my bedroom. Now, I stood in front of the full-length mirror on the back of the closet door, and for the first time, I didn't see myself. I saw myself through his eyes. I saw the soft arms, the comfortable hips, the stretch marks on my stomach that were a roadmap of my motherhood. I saw the tired eyes of a woman who packed the lunches and drove the carpools and stayed up late helping with homework. I saw the body of a woman who had poured every ounce of her energy into her family, into her husband, into the life they had built, leaving nothing left for herself. And all I could feel was a deep, burning shame. He was right. I had let myself go, and he had let me go because of it. I sank to the floor, my back against the door, and I cried. I cried for my broken heart, for my broken marriage, and for the stranger I saw in the mirror. A woman I didn't even know anymore. The life I had known was over, and I was alone, surrounded by the ghosts of my past, with my husband's cruel parting words as my only companion. The weeks after David left were a blur of beige and gray. My world, once a vibrant, chaotic landscape of family life, shrank to the four walls of my silent house. I lived in a rotation of 3 pairs of old, stained sweatpants. My diet consisted of the things my kids left on their plates and entire bags of potato chips eaten late at night. Standing in the cold, blue light of the open refrigerator, David's parting words had become the new soundtrack of my life. A cruel, looping track playing in my head. You let yourself go. You let yourself go. You let yourself go. And I believed him. I had looked in the mirror and seen the evidence. I had failed the most basic test of wifehood to remain effortlessly, perpetually desirable. The shame was a heavy, suffocating blanket. I would get the kids off to school, my face a mask of strained maternal cheerfulness. And then the moment the door closed, I would collapse onto the sofa, the weight of my own failure too heavy to carry. I was at rock bottom, a lonely, desolate place where the only comfort was the salty crunch of a potato chip and the mindless, numbing glow of daytime television. I was drowning in my own grief, and a part of me didn't even want to be saved. The change, when it came, wasn't a lightning bolt. It was a tiny flickering spark in the darkness. My daughter, Lily, who was 6 at the time, was drawing a picture at the kitchen table. It was a family portrait. There was her, and her older brother, Sam, and then there were 2 figures of me. One was a smiling, vibrant stick figure in a bright yellow dress, labeled Mommy Before. The other was a gray, slumped-over figure lying on a sofa, labeled Mommy Now. She showed it to me with the innocent, brutal honesty of a child. I miss the yellow dress, Mommy, she said, her little face full of concern, seeing myself through her eyes, seeing my grief personified as a gray, sad blob on a piece of construction paper. It broke something open inside me. I looked at my daughter, at her worried little face, and I felt a surge of shame so profound it was sickening. But this was a different kind of shame. It wasn't the shame David had given me. It was the shame of realizing I was letting his cruelty define me, and that my children were paying the price. That night, after the kids were in bed, I looked in the mirror again. I saw the same tired face, the same soft body, but for the first time, underneath the shame, I saw a flicker of anger, not just at David, at myself. Anger for believing him, anger for letting him have so much power over me, even in his absence, anger for becoming the gray blob in my daughter's drawing. I wasn't a let-go person. I was a person who had carried 2 children, who had run a household, who had supported her husband's career, who had loved with her whole heart. My body wasn't a failure. It was a roadmap of my life. And I decided, in that moment, that I was done letting David be the one who held the map. I wasn't thinking about losing weight. I wasn't thinking about getting him back. I was just thinking that I could not spend 1 more second sitting on that sofa. marinating in my own sorrow. I felt like the walls were closing in. I had to get out. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I put on a pair of old, dusty sneakers. I pulled on a baggy sweatshirt. And I walked out the front door into the cool, dark night. They always show it in movies like a fun montage with upbeat music, right? The character finds their motivation, and suddenly they're jogging in a cute outfit. Looking determined, let me tell you. The beginning of my fitness journey was not a fun montage. It was ugly. My first walk was pathetic. I only made it to the end of our block before my lungs were burning and my shins were screaming in protest. I was so out of shape, it was shocking. I had to stop, bent over, gasping for air under a streetlight, feeling a fresh wave of shame. But as I stood there, I looked back at my house, at the warm lights in the windows, and I thought, at least I'm not on the couch. It was a small, pathetic victory, but it was a victory. So I did it again the next night, and the next, each night. I walked a little further, a block, then 2, then a whole mile. It was my secret. Late night rebellion, just me, the quiet, sleeping houses, and the steady rhythm of my own 2 feet on the pavement. For the first time in months, the voice in my head wasn't David's. It was my own, counting my steps, focusing on my breathing, the movement, the cool night air, the simple act of putting one foot in front of the other. It was a balm to my wounded soul. After a few weeks of walking, I decided to try to run. The first attempt was a disaster. I probably made it 50 feet before I had a stitch in my side and had to stop. My lungs on fire, but I didn't give up. The next night, I made it 100 feet. The night after that, a whole block. It hurt. Everything hurt. My knees, my back, my pride. There were so many nights I wanted to quit, to just go back inside and crawl under the covers with a bag of cookies. But then I would picture David's smug, pitying face, and I would picture my daughter's drawing of the sad, gray blob, and I would keep going. My anger became my fuel. Every painful step was a screw you to David. Every breathless gasp was me reclaiming the air he had sucked out of my life. I wasn't running to get thin. I was running to get strong. I was running to feel powerful in my own body again. A body he had tried to convince me was worthless. One night, about 2 months into my secret journey, something happened. I was jogging my usual route, a slow, steady pace, and I realized it didn't hurt. My breathing was even, my legs felt strong. The rhythm felt good. I wasn't fighting my body anymore. I was working with it. I decided to push it. I kept going, past my usual turnaround point. I ran another block, then another. I ran until I had completed a full mile without stopping. I finally came to a halt under a streetlight, gasping for air, sweat pouring down my face. Every muscle in my body singing with a beautiful, clean ache. And a huge, genuine, triumphant smile spread across my face. It was just 1 mile. It was nothing. But to me, it was everything. I wasn't the gray blob on the couch anymore. I wasn't the woman David had left behind. I was a woman who could run a mile. And I had a feeling I was just getting started. Running that first mile wasn't an endpoint. It was a doorway. I had pushed through the initial wall of pain and self-doubt. And on the other side, I found something I hadn't felt in years: curiosity. I started to wonder, what else can this body do? My nightly runs became a non-negotiable part of my day. I got faster, my endurance grew. The physical changes started to become undeniable. My clothes fit better. The persistent, tired ache in my lower back disappeared. The face looking back at me in the mirror was still mine, but the sadness in the eyes was being replaced by a spark of determination. After a few months, I hit a plateau. I was fitter, but I didn't feel strong. I wanted more. So I made the second scariest decision of my new life. I took the money I was no longer spending on takeout and comfort food groceries, and I joined a gym. The first time I walked into a real gym, I almost turned around and walked right back out. It was intimidating. The air was thick with the smell of rubber and sweat. It was loud, with clanking weights and the grunts of impossibly fit people. I felt like an imposter all over again. I spent the first 2 weeks just hiding on the elliptical machine in the corner, watching everyone else, especially the women in the weight room. They were amazing. They were lifting heavy barbells, their faces set in masks of pure, focused effort. They weren't there to get smaller, they were there to get stronger, and I wanted what they had. So I started to study. My late-night sessions, once filled with potato chips and self-pity, were now filled with a different kind of consumption. I devoured articles on nutrition, kinesiology, and weightlifting. I watched hours of videos on proper form for squats, deadlifts, and bench presses. I learned the difference between a macronutrient and a micronutrient. I was no longer just exercising, I was training. I was becoming a student of my own body. Hesitantly, I ventured into the free weight section of the gym during its quietest hours. I started with just the barbell, my form shaky and uncertain, but I stuck with it. And I discovered something incredible. The feeling of successfully lifting a heavy weight off the floor was 1,000 times more satisfying than seeing a smaller number on a scale. It was a tangible, undeniable statement of my own power. Each new personal record was a brick I was laying in the foundation of my new self. This journey was intense, and it was lonely. I needed an outlet, a place to keep track of my progress and my thoughts. So I did something that felt both vain and terrifying. I started an anonymous Instagram account. I called it Phoenix Fit, a name that felt both cheesy and deeply, profoundly true. I was rising from the ashes of my old life. My first post was a picture of my own hands, calloused and rough from gripping a barbell. The caption read, "They're not pretty, but they are strong. Learning to love the hands that can lift me up." It started as a personal diary. I didn't post pose selfies in cute matching gym sets. I posted the truth. I posted videos of my lifts, including the ones I failed. I posted pictures of my healthy, simple meals. I wrote long, honest captions about the mental struggle, about fighting the urge to emotionally eat, about the days I felt weak and wanted to quit. It started as a secret diary, a way to hold myself accountable. I had no idea that by sharing my struggle, I was accidentally building a community. The first few comments were from other women. "Thank you for being so real. I failed a squat today and felt like a loser, but this post made me feel less alone. Your calloused hands are beautiful." I started talking to them, responding to every comment. We were a small tribe of women who were tired of the perfect fitness world, a world that often felt just as judgmental as the one I had left behind. We weren't trying to achieve a certain look. We were trying to achieve a certain feeling strength. My little anonymous account began to grow. 10 followers became 100. 100 became 1,000. 1,000 became 10,000. I found I had a knack for explaining complex fitness and nutrition concepts in a simple, encouraging way. I started posting workout ideas, meal prep tips, and motivational thoughts. I was raw, and I was honest. And in a world of filters and fake perfection, that honesty was resonating. The physical transformation was happening. Of course, the baby weight David had so cruelly thrown in my face was gone, replaced by lean, hard-earned muscle. I was stronger and fitter at 35 than I had been at 22, but the real transformation was on the inside. I remember one specific moment. I was at the gym, attempting a new personal record on my deadlift. It was a weight that, a year ago, I wouldn't have even been able to budge. The bar was heavy on the floor. I set my feet, gripped the bar, and pulled. For a second. It didn't move. The old voice in my head, the one that sounded a lot like David, whispered, "You can't do it. You're not strong enough." But then a new voice, my own, answered back, "Watch me." I drove my feet into the floor, kept my back straight, and I pulled with everything I had. The weight broke from the floor. It was a slow, grinding, ugly lift, but I got it. I stood up, the heavy barbell in my hands, my body shaking with the effort. I had done it. I looked at myself in the gym mirror. My face was red, my hair was a mess, and I was sweating profusely. And I thought, this is the most beautiful I have ever been. That night, I posted about it. I wrote about the voices in our heads, the ones that tell us we're not good enough, and the incredible, soul-shaking power of proving them wrong. The post went viral. I woke up the next morning to 20,000 new followers and an inbox flooded with messages from women all over the world. They shared their own stories of overcoming, of finding strength, of learning to love their bodies for what they could do, not just how they looked. I sat there, reading through the messages, tears streaming down my face. David's words, the ones meant to isolate me and shame me into silence, had done the exact opposite. They had given me a new voice. They had connected me to a global community. I thought I was just fixing myself, but I was beginning to realize I had stumbled upon a movement, and I was at the front of it. Waking up to a viral post is a surreal experience. My quiet, anonymous Instagram account, my personal diary of calloused hands and small victories, had exploded overnight. My follower count was climbing by the thousands every hour. My inbox was a roaring flood of messages from women all over the world, each one sharing a piece of her own story, each one reflecting my own struggle back at me. I sat there, scrolling through the messages, tears streaming down my face. You've inspired me. I thought I was the only one who felt this way. You're showing me what's possible. It was overwhelming. And with that wave of connection came a new, heavy sense of responsibility. These women were looking to me, listening to me. Who was I to be giving them advice? I was just a heartbroken mom who had started jogging in the dark. I wasn't a professional. I was just me. The imposter syndrome, which I thought I had conquered in the gym, came roaring back. But this time, I knew how to fight it. The old me would have retreated, deleted the account, and hidden from the attention. The new me saw a challenge. These women deserved more than just my story. They deserved my expertise. So, I made a decision. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. I enrolled in an online program to become a certified personal trainer. A few months later, I added a nutrition certification. My life became a new kind of grind. I'd get the kids to school, go to the gym for my own workout, spend my days studying anatomy and kinesiology, and spend my nights writing posts for my growing online community and studying for my exams after the kids were asleep. It was exhausting. It was exhilarating. I was building. The day I passed my final certification exam, I did something that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. I changed my Instagram profile picture from an anonymous shot of my running shoes to a photo of my own face, a real photo, taken after a hard workout. I was smiling, my face flushed with effort, my hair a sweaty mess. It was a picture of a strong, happy, real woman. And in the bio, I wrote, "My name is Maya. I'm the founder of Phoenix Fitness. I believe in strength over skinny, and I believe we are all stronger than we think." Phoenix Fitness was born. It was no longer just a social media account. It was a brand. It was a philosophy. My philosophy was simple. Our bodies are not ornaments to be admired by others. They are powerful machines to be respected and cared for. We don't work out to punish ourselves for what we ate. We work out to celebrate what our bodies can do. I used my savings, the money I had been putting aside for my freelance work, and I invested it in myself. I hired a web developer to build a professional website. I started offering online coaching programs, personalized workout plans, and nutrition guides based on my philosophy of strength and sustainability. I thought maybe a few dozen people would sign up. The first round of 50 available spots sold out in 10 minutes. The next round of 100 sold out in 5. The brand exploded. I was featured in online magazines. I was interviewed on podcasts. My story, the raw, honest truth of it, was my brand. I wasn't a supermodel who had never had a day of self-doubt in her life. I was a real woman who had been to rock bottom and had crawled her way back out, one deadlift at a time. And that, it turned out, was what people were desperate for. It was the craziest thing. A few years ago, I was crying on my kitchen floor because my husband told me I'd let myself go. Now, I was the CEO of my own 6-figure company, with women from all over the world paying me to help them find the strength I'd found in myself. The online business was thriving, but my community wanted more. They wanted a real, physical space. They wanted a home. I was terrified of the financial risk, of the responsibility, but I knew it was the next logical step. I took out a business loan. I found a beautiful, light-filled space in a newly renovated industrial district, and for 6 months, I poured my soul into creating the Phoenix Fitness Studio. It wasn't a gym. It was a sanctuary. We had top-of-the-line equipment, Yes. But we also had comfortable lounge areas, a station for making herbal tea, and a small library of books on wellness and empowerment. The walls were painted a warm, calming gray, and in huge, elegant letters on the main wall was our motto, Rise Stronger. I was determined to create a space that was the complete antithesis of the intimidating, judgmental gyms I had been so afraid of. This would be a place where women could come and feel safe, supported, and powerful. The demand was so high before we even opened our doors that I knew I couldn't operate on a normal sign-up basis. So I created a system. Classes were sold in 8-week blocks, and you had to apply to get a spot. The application wasn't about your current fitness level. It asked one question: what does becoming stronger mean to you? The day we opened, we already had a 6-month waiting list. It became the hottest ticket in the city's wellness scene, not because it was exclusive for the sake of being exclusive, but because it was exclusive for the sake of being authentic. We were building a community, not just selling memberships. One evening, about a month after our grand opening, I was standing alone in the studio after the last class had gone home. The space was quiet, smelling of eucalyptus and sweat and success. I looked at my reflection in the wall of mirrors. I saw a woman I barely recognized, and for the first time, that was a wonderful thing. My body was strong, my eyes were clear, and I was standing in a room I had built, in a business I had created. Born from the ugliest moment of my life, I was no longer the sad, gray blob from my daughter's drawing. I was the phoenix. I had risen, and I had no idea that the man who had set my old life on fire was about to come knocking on the door of my new one. Years passed, 4 of them. Phoenix Fitness wasn't just a studio anymore. It was an empire. We had a line of apparel, a best-selling book, and a massive online platform with subscribers all over the globe. I was no longer just a trainer. I was the CEO of a multi-million-dollar wellness brand. The tired, heartbroken woman crying on her kitchen floor was a ghost, a character from a story that had happened to someone else. I was happy. I was strong. I was whole. The one thing I never compromised on was the integrity of my studio. It remained my sanctuary, the heart of the entire brand. It was small, exclusive, and the waitlist was now over a year long, and I still, despite my busy schedule, personally reviewed every single application for our 8-week sessions. It was my ritual. It kept me grounded. It reminded me of where I came from. The applications weren't about fitness levels. They were about mindset. The only question was, what does becoming stronger mean to you? I read every answer, looking for honesty, for vulnerability, for a desire to build something real, not just to chase a superficial goal. It was my way of protecting the community I had built. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, I was in my office, a beautiful, light-filled space that overlooked a quiet garden. I was going through the applications for the next session, a cup of herbal tea steaming beside me. The process was usually inspiring, reading stories of women wanting to reclaim their health, their confidence, their lives. I was scrolling through the digital forms, reading the names: Jennifer Lee, Sarah Chen, Emily Carter. And then I saw it, a name that made the air freeze in my lungs, a name I had not seen or spoken in almost 5 years. David Morgan. I blinked, thinking my eyes were playing tricks on me. But there it was. My ex-husband. I clicked open the application, my heart starting a slow, heavy, percussive beat against my ribs. The contact information confirmed it. His email address, his phone number. It was him. A wave of emotions so powerful it almost knocked me over washed through me. First, pure, unadulterated shock. Then, a hot, familiar rage. An old dragon stirring from its long sleep. How dare he? How dare he try to enter this space, my space, the sanctuary I had built from the ashes of the life he had so casually burned down? Did he have any idea? Was he mocking me? My hand was shaking as I scrolled down to his answer to the question. I had to know. What does becoming stronger mean to you? I read his answer, and all the rage just dissolved. It was replaced by a cold, clear, pitying understanding. His answer was a paragraph of shallow, corporate-sounding jargon. It was about reclaiming my competitive edge, It was about optimizing my physical performance to align with my professional goals. It was about getting back the body he'd had in his late 20s. It was all about aesthetics, about ego, about winning. There was no vulnerability, no honesty, no soul. He hadn't changed at all, and in that moment, I understood. He wasn't here to mock me. He probably didn't even know I would be the one reading this, in his mind. I was still just the ex-wife he'd left behind. He saw Phoenix Fitness not as my personal triumph, but as the hot new status symbol, the most exclusive gym in the city. Getting into my class wasn't about wellness for him. It was a trophy to be acquired. He wanted to be able to say he'd gotten in. It was, as always, all about him. I leaned back in my chair, a slow, humorless smile spreading across my face. Oh, the irony. The beautiful, perfect, poetic irony. The man who had shamed me for my body was now applying to my program to fix his own. The man who had tried to break my spirit was now asking me to help him build his backup. I called my business partner and dear friend, Sarah the mommy blogger who had discovered me all those years ago, and who I had eventually hired to run my marketing. "You are not going to believe who just applied for the next session," I said, my voice dripping with a dark humor. I told her. She was silent for a moment, and then she let out a string of curses that made me laugh. "Just delete it," she said, her voice full of righteous anger. "Block his email address. He doesn't deserve to even be in your system." "No," I said, a slow, calculated plan beginning to form in my mind. "No. Deleting it is hiding. I'm done hiding. I think this is an opportunity." An opportunity for what she asked. "Closure," I said, "the final, perfect kind." I pulled up his application on my screen. I didn't reject it. I didn't approve it. I just typed a single, small note in his file. A note only I would see. Pending in-person review required. I knew he wouldn't get an official acceptance email, but I also knew a man like David, a man with his ego and his sense of entitlement. He wouldn't wait for one. He would just assume he was in. He would show up on the first day, ready to claim his spot. And I would be ready for him. I closed my laptop. The rage was gone, replaced by a profound Zen-like calm. For years, he had been the judge, and I had been the one found wanting. But the tables had turned. The roles were reversed. I was the gatekeeper now. I was the one who set the standards. And I was about to give my ex-husband the first honest piece of feedback he had probably ever received in his entire life. The first day of a new 8-week session at Phoenix Fitness was always my favorite day. It was electric. The studio buzzed with the nervous, excited energy of new beginnings. A fresh group of women, all of them having answered the question of what strength meant to them, were about to embark on a journey that I knew would change their lives, because it had changed mine. I was in the middle of the studio floor, greeting the new members, learning their names, when my front desk manager, a wonderful young woman named Chloe, approached me. A troubled look on her face. "Maya," she whispered, "I'm sorry to bother you, but there's a man at the front desk. He's not on the acceptance list, but he's insisting he's supposed to be in this session. He says his name is David Morgan and that he's a friend of yours." My smile didn't falter, my posture didn't change, but inside, a quiet, cold calm settled over me. The day had come. "Thank you, Chloe," I said, my voice even. "I'll handle it." I walked towards the front of the studio, and there he was. The 5 years had not been kind to David. The sharp, handsome lawyer I had been married to was gone. In his place was a man who looked soft, puffy. He had a noticeable paunch straining against the fabric of a brand new, ridiculously expensive athletic shirt that still had the creases in it. His face, once sharp and arrogant, was now fleshy and tired. He looked like a man who had been living on expensive steak dinners and self-satisfaction, and it was catching up with him. He was arguing with the other desk assistant, his voice a low, entitled growl. "I'm telling you, there must be a mistake. Just check again. David Morgan." He saw me approaching, and his entire demeanor changed. A slick, familiar smile spread across his face, the one he always used when he wanted something. "Maya," he boomed, as if we were old friends who had just seen each other last week. "There you are. Look at this place you've done so well for yourself. It's incredible." He gestured to the desk assistant. "Can you tell your staff to let me in?" There seems to be some mix-up with my registration. This was it. The moment I had unconsciously been preparing for since the day I first went for a walk in the dark. There's no mix-up. David, I said, my voice quiet but carrying an authority that made him falter. The small crowd of new members was watching, curious. I gestured to a small, private office near the front desk. Could I speak with you for a moment? He followed me into the office, his confident swagger gone, replaced by a flicker of confusion. I closed the door behind us. I don't understand. He started. I sent in my application. I'm on the wait list. I know, I said. I review every application personally. I read yours. He looked relieved. Oh, great. So you can just sort this out, then. I can't wait to get started. I'm really looking to get my competitive edge back. You know. I looked him dead in the eye. David, I said, my voice calm. What was the question on the application? He looked confused. What? The question, I repeated. What did it ask? He floundered. I don't know. Something about strength, it asked. What does becoming stronger mean to you, I said. And your answer was about optimizing your performance and getting back the body you had in your 20s. It was all about how you look, about your ego. I leaned against the desk, my arms crossed. We have a different philosophy here at Phoenix Fitness. We believe that strength is not about aesthetics. It's about integrity. It's about respecting yourself and the others around you. It's about building yourself up from the inside out, not just polishing the exterior. I paused, letting the words sink in. He just stared at me, his mouth slightly open, finally beginning to understand that this was not a conversation about a clerical error. My primary responsibility as the owner of this studio, I continued, is to protect the safe, positive, and supportive community that we have built here. It's a community for people, mostly women, who are tired of being judged and shamed and told they're not good enough. It is a sanctuary from the kind of thinking that you represent. His face flushed a deep, ugly red. So, to be clear, I said, delivering the final verdict. There is no mistake. I have reviewed your application, and your request to join this community is denied, based on your past conduct, and on the values you expressed in your application. You do not meet the criteria for membership. We are not a good fit for you. He was speechless, utterly, completely speechless. The man who always had an answer, who could talk his way out of anything, had nothing. I had judged him, and I had found him wanting. I walked to the door and opened it for him. I wish you well on your fitness journey. David, I said, my voice devoid of any malice. It was just a statement of fact. I'm sure there are other gyms that would be a much better fit for your goals. He just stood there for a moment, a man completely adrift, a ghost from a past I had thoroughly conquered. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of my studio, past the crowd of strong, waiting women, and out my front door. I watched him go, and I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just a quiet sense of peace. The final chapter was closed. I walked back out onto the studio floor, a genuine smile on my face. All right, ladies, I called out, my voice ringing with a new, light energy. Welcome to Phoenix Fitness. Let's get stronger. My ex-husband told me to lose weight because he thought my worth was tied to the size of my body. He thought he could break me by shaming me, but he didn't break me. He freed me. I didn't just lose weight. I lost the dead weight of his judgment, his expectations, his definition of my worth. I gained strength and muscle and a multi-million-dollar empire built on the very idea of self-respect he tried to take from me. In the end, I built a world where I get to set the standards, and he just wasn't strong enough to get in. So to anyone out there who has ever been made to feel like you are not good enough, don't change for them. Change for you. Become so strong, so happy, and so completely, unapologetically yourself that their opinion becomes nothing more than irrelevant noise. Because the best body isn't a revenge body. It's a body you love. A body that is strong. A body that is yours. Thank you for listening. If you've ever found strength in your struggle, I want to hear about it. Like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you next time.